start playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you are chosen anonymously as being the dungeon master. Problem is, you have no clue where to start. You have no idea what to do. I know what you're going through. Along the way, I found some tips and tricks from other DMs, from other people that I wish I knew when I was starting. So I'm gonna sum up a couple of things that I found very useful for beginner DMs, for beginner players, in having a very good and a very awesome first experience in a game like Dungeons and Dragons. Tip number one, a very good thing to start off with is, first of all, get to know the rules as a DM, obviously. Doing a pre-adventure session. So that's a gaming session where you and the rest of your party are coming together, you're discussing the rules, you have the handbook with you, you have the player handbook with you, and you just go over the rules as a group, and you're making your characters. This is the moment where you, as a player, make your character, where the DM can set some basic house rules, which with things that you're gonna do, whether you can do or not. Besides that, you get to know your party already. You get to know who's gonna play what, who's gonna play which race, which class, how they see their character, how they interact with the environment, with the outside, and how you as a DM can build around that. D&D and Pathfinder are more than just going through a session or going through a series of encounters. A lot of people think that when they're starting out with Dungeons and Dragons, we're gonna fight some goblins, we're gonna fight some orcs, and we're gonna kill them all, but that's not about Dungeons and Dragons. It's about storytelling. It's about something that the DM creates for his players, and that he walks them through the story. Tip number two, use D&D Beyond. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, there is an awesome app or an awesome website called D&D Beyond, which allows you to make your character, to access some basic rules, to access books, and look up a lot of things. For instance, you can look up almost every items. You can look up basic attacks, basic rules, and it's very handy to have, basically. Most things on that side are, well, not for free, but the basic stuff is free to use. So you can just go into the site, log in, and you can access the most basic things that you need to play a game. As this video is recorded in 2020, a very weird year with a lot of stuff going on, and if you're still watching this video in set time frame, they actually released a couple of starting out adventures, which are very, very good to start off with. So I definitely recommend on playing that, because that brings us to tip number three, especially for our DMs. If you start out for the first time, play an official campaign. Like, yeah, Joe, I need to invest in that. And there comes the 2020 disaster year as a free starter adventure for first-time players. Use it. It's a very good way to see how an adventure is built. And I mentioned it before, if you start out, you think we're gonna of 6 or 5 encounters, and that's it. That's Dungeons and Dragons. If you run an official campaign, you immediately see that that's not the case. How it's built up is very different. It's not built up going from one encounter to another. It's built up around a whole adventure, a whole idea. Tip number 4, make a very basic character. If you're starting out for the first time playing Dungeons and Dragons, don't make it too complicated. You need to get familiar with all the rules, with everything that is thrown at you, and it's a lot. Believe me, it's a lot. There is a lot of nitpicking that can be done in playing a game. So if you're gonna make a character, make it standard. Make a standard fighter, make a standard paladin, or make a very basic warlock. Don't go into complicated making subclasses, go make mixed classes, because it's gonna make your life a hell. 4, and this one goes out to all the DMs that are very creative with all their stuff, making a bunch of stuff. Because your first sessions, your first adventure should be around getting familiar with the rules. I already said it for the players, but for the DMs, you're the one keeping them in check. You're the one allowing things or restricting the players in doing certain things. So if you're gonna start off making a whole set of landscape or a whole set of sculptures of buildings, your focus is gonna shift towards giving them an experience for one time instead of making an experience that lasts the lifespan of their characters. I made that mistake as well, by the way. I made a ton of stuff. I made tiles, I made houses, I made tiny little things to give my players an experience. But then when I got more into it and I got more into implementing the rules, their experience shifted towards something that was more nitpicky, because I was sticking to the rules more than giving them a smooth time through the whole adventure, with giving them cool things to look at. Start out with a battle map. You can draw out whatever you need. You can draw little tables, you can draw the walls, the edges of the map, and they can still play on it. The only thing that they need is a character, and it's very simple, very basic, and it does everything what you need. You can draw everything out. Your adventurers can have feel where they are and can appeal to their theater of the mind. And that's actually something that is very important. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the theater of the mind is basically what's going on in your head. You're visualizing everything in your head, and that is what you as a DM should be able to create. You can go off making an elaborate set of props, of houses, of landscapes, which makes it easier to have a unified theater of the mind over the group of players. But in the beginning, as I said, it's not really necessary, because you need to focus on making them aware of certain rules, a certain set of rules that are applied when you're playing a game. With that said, I think those are all of the, let me go through my notes, all of the major tips that I want everyone to have